currently doing my PhD in psychology at London South Bank University. And I'm going to talk to you today about one of my research projects which investigated feelings in a first crisis in psychosis through the creation of drawings. I will start by giving you a quick overview of the study. I'm going to talk a little bit about the method that I used. So I asked participants to create an image of their related to the feelings, about their feelings related to their first crisis. And I'm going to present some data to illustrate the findings of the study and the method that I used, and finish with a few concluding remarks. So this study is a qualitative research project, and it took a hermeneutic phenomenological perspective. 7 participants took part in so-called visual interviews, and I'm going to talk about what I mean by that in a minute. And the interviews were about people's feelings in a first crisis in psychosis. So by psychosis I mean, or by psychotic experiences, I mean experiences such as hearing voices, seeing visions, having unusual beliefs. And these experiences are not necessarily associated with a mental health problem, but they can be very frightening and distressing. And people that took part in this study were all mental health service users, who did find their experiences of hearing voices or having unusual beliefs very frightening and distressing, and received psychological treatment for it. So they were invited to create an abstract drawing as part of the semi-structured interview process, because it can be very challenging to speak about feelings and put feelings into words. So a little bit about the visual interview. So the interview schedule that I designed and used for this study is divided into 3 stages: expression, mapping, and verbal exploration. So first I asked people to briefly describe their occurrence of their first crisis in psychosis. So for most people, their first crisis was also their first episode, but that was not necessarily the case. So some people reached a crisis point a bit later on. And so I asked them to create an image that illustrated their feelings related to their first crisis in psychosis, and they were given paper and a selection of drawing materials. And the second stage was mapping. So once they fully completed their drawings, they were guided to describe parts of the drawing, the overall meaning, and the process that they went through as they created the image. And this was done to illuminate them, or I was hoping that would illuminate the meaning of the image for the individual and for me as a researcher. Then the last stage was verbal exploration. So the image that the participants created was remained a point of reference throughout the interview, but I also asked people further questions such as, what was it like for you, what did it mean? And so these were open, reflexive, and flexible questions to allow participants to freely explore their experiences. It was not that I had a specific set of questions in mind. It was more, very open questions, because I wanted the interview to be as participant-led as possible. So, and the reason I used drawings or images as part of this study was because, so there actually is 3 reasons. I wanted to, not the right slide, sorry. So the argument that I would like to make is that drawings can create a path towards feelings and emotion, as they offer a means of exploring the felt sense of an experience. They can help communicate felt experiences through metaphors, because I would argue that images act as visual metaphors, and they can provide a medium they can act as safe bridges and enable safe emotional expression, which is really important when we talk to people about very distressing and frightening experiences. So we'll now talk about these three main points in a bit more detail. First, exploring the felt sense. So what I mean by felt sense, that is a type of bodily knowing, something fuzzy, difficult to pin down, can be blurred, difficult to describe, difficult to put into words, yet it is clearly there inside us telling us about our situation. And an image is helpful to explore that and get as close as possible to the felt sense of an experience, because it is also experienced on a sensory felt level, and in part echoes how its creator was bodily involved in the creation of the drawing or the image. So therefore I would say an image offers a way into phenomena, or way in phenomena that are non-linear, non-linguistic, and directly intertwined with the felt sense experience, such as, for example, existential feelings, atmospheres, moods, and this was what I was trying to understand as part of this study within the context of the first crisis in psychosis. And I would like to illustrate this by showing a drawing that one of my participants created. And I think this is a good example, or it nicely shows how images can capture the felt sense of an experience. So this person talked a bit about how his experience was very chaotic. He found it hard to describe and found it hard to put into words what he was experiencing. And here's what he said. So the drawing represents my life, which has been very chaotic. I don't know really, it is just how I feel rather than being actually something in its own right. I'm making steps towards something, I'm moving towards something, but I'm not sure what. So it was really interesting because as he talked me through the drawing and the different parts of it, and then the drawing as a whole, what he at first described as something very chaotic, fuzzy, blurry, became a bit clearer and a bit more tangible. So he said, for example, the crosses that he drew, that they symbolise death, because in crisis he felt as if he was dying. He said everything sort of felt unsafe. He was caught up in an uncertain, disempowering state. He said, I'm not powerful, as he lingered between life and death. And then he drew lots of floating and tangled lines, purple lines, and he said those symbolise chaos, because in crisis he felt disoriented, and he described a dissociative state where he said he lost awareness, he felt dazed, and he questioned his humanity. And there was a movement towards the bottom of the page, so he said he was swimming towards the sea, and again he didn't know what the sea represented, or in his opinion it could be different things, it could mean different things. It, for example, represented his uncertain future, and also a sense of unreality, a place where a clear distinction between the real and the unreal felt impossible. And this predominated his lived experience of a first crisis in psychosis. And about halfway through now, if you want to swap.
Qui j'étais censé...
So, drawings also can help communicate feelings through metaphors. They work at a metaphorical level. They offer ambiguity in multiple meanings and can therefore communicate felt sense experience. They can aid participants' meaning making and inspire rich verbal exploration. And they can also enhance, which is really important for me, empathic understanding and communicating the nature of unshared experience. So I was interested in getting as close as possible to people's experiences, so an experience that I've not had myself. And I would like to illustrate this by showing a few small images that one of my participants created. So I think I'm going to focus on the first one here. This participant drew a Rubik's Cube, which was a metaphor for the confusion he felt and a sense of disorientation that predominated his first experience of psychosis. So he said, it's like a Rubik's Cube. I can't figure out the puzzle. I wish I could put all those bits together and figure it all out. And as he talked me through the drawing, he said, the cube's mismatching pieces resemble the different bits that constitute his distress. So he identified his voices. He was hearing voices that harassed and abused him verbally. So his voices were part of the problem, but he struggled to understand how the other bits, his negative sense of self, these are his words, his negative sense of self, being homosexual and having strong religious beliefs, how these bits fit into the bigger picture. And he said, well, it's like doing a puzzle, but you can't quite figure out the puzzle because it is so difficult. I just wish I could put all those bits together and figure it all out. So this interview was really interesting because it showed me how drawings can act as an interesting starting point for a discussion and inspire rich verbal exploration. So we started by talking about confusion. He said he was really confused and didn't know how all those bits fit together. And then I talked to him a bit about what it was like for him, what that confusion felt like, how he experienced that. And then he arrived, which was very interesting, at the conclusion that was actually, there was confusion there, but there was also a sense of disorientation. He felt lost and everything felt somehow unfamiliar and unsafe. So the last point that I would like to make is about safe emotional expression. So art therapy research has shown that drawings, images, visual metaphors can act as safe bridges and enable safe emotional expression, which I think is particularly important when we talk to people about very distressing, frightening and also traumatic experiences. And what art therapy research has shown is that by being distanced from the body of the patient, artwork provides a safer medium for the expression of difficult and painful memories and feelings. So it is believed that dissociation occurs between the self and the content of the picture, but without impairment to the client's state of cognition, and therefore a sense of personal control and integrity is better preserved. And that again is very important when we talk to people about experiences that are traumatic, were traumatic, and talking about it might be re-traumatizing. And the next drawing I would like to present, I believe that powerfully shows how images can create safe containers for the exploration of painful and traumatic experiences. And for this participant and many others actually, their crisis felt inseparable from violence, abuse and neglect that they'd experienced in the past. So this participant, I think, powerfully captured the shocking and shattering quality of his first psychotic crisis in his drawing of a lightning bolt destroying his world. And that resulted in feelings of brokenness, a sense of entrapment, disorientation, confusion, again, what we've heard before, disintegration, just unspeakable suffering, really. So what he said was, it was like a lightning bolt hitting my world. It was like I couldn't escape from it. I didn't know what was happening as well. It never happened to me before. I didn't know what was happening. I couldn't explain it. It was just a terrible, horrible experience, one I don't wish to go through again. And so I think this shows that drawings can act as safe bridges to talk about and express traumatic experiences. I found that this person, that was my personal experience with the interview, that person did maintain the same sense of control and integrity, but also it was really striking how he told me about this experience and in detail and provided a vivid verbal description of his experiences. And also the way you talked about it was so coherent, and it did help me understand or get a bit closer to what it was like for him. And again, I'm referring to this idea of communicating unshared experiences through images. So I think it did help me to understand this experience that I personally did not have before or have never had experienced myself. And it did help me understand his experience of it. So I'd like to conclude by summarising the main points of my talk. I think the richness of drawings combined with verbal exploration can provide deep insight into participants' experiences and is therefore very helpful in qualitative research. And drawings provide a non-linguistic way of capturing felt, pre-reflective and bodily experience. They can act as safe bridges and enable safe emotional expression. And I would say one of the most important points for me was that the image created by a participant, for me, does not only provide an interesting starting point for discussion in an interview, in a qualitative research interview, but also in itself can be a medium that enables a broader and more in-depth exploration of the phenomenon that's being investigated in the context of a qualitative research project. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.